This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the WCRA and Rank Ride. Guys, WCRA, World Champion Rodeo Alliance, they're putting on the Stampede at the E event August 11th through the 15th in Guthrie, Oklahoma at the legendary Lazy E Arena. With 4 days of qualifiers, the projected event payout will be $600,000. Athletes can enter the Open to the World pool for their chance to compete in the one-day $300,000 rodeo on August 15th. Youth athletes also have a chance to go head-to-head with pros when they enter the DY pool for a chance to compete in the August 15th Stampede. The Stampede at the E Champion will be eligible for the Triple Crown of Rodeo, an annual bonus that pays $1 million to any one athlete or collection of athletes who wins first place in any 3 consecutive WCRA Triple Crown designated rodeos. Guys, at the moment, this CBS televised broadcast event is the single best opportunity in the world for rodeo athletes and rodeo fans to watch this event. Entries for the event will remain open until August 5th at 5 p.m. Central Time. Entry fees for the open division will be $625. The DY fee is $500. All entries will be taken on entrytool.com. That's entrytool.com. For more information about the event and WCRA as a whole, visit WCRArodeo.com. Have you guys ever played fantasy football, fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, fantasy whatever? Well, now you can play fantasy bull riding. Rank Ride is the PBR's official fantasy sports app, guys. Go to rankridefantasy.com. Sign up through the store, rankridestore.com, to get your membership for a chance to win big cash prizes and giveaways. Guys, Rank Ride is changing the way you interact with PBR bull riding. It is one of the most exciting endeavors I think we've ever seen. rankridefantasy.com and rankridestore.com to check it out.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradu.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado. On this episode of the podcast, we have got my man Bonner Bolton. Bonner's a pretty inspirational guy. Some of you may know him from the show Dancing with the Stars. Some of you may know him from his modeling campaigns for Saks Fifth Avenue, Tom Ford, super men's style brand. But Bonner got his start out on the ranch like so many of us. He was an outstanding bull rider. He had a pretty much limitless potential until he had his accident where he broke his neck in 2016, which changed his entire life and his entire outlook on what life means. And he's going to get into all that on this episode. He's one of the few people I know that was able to transition from an injury in rodeo the way he did and convert his life to something totally different with that same energy and passion he put into it. He's done amazing things, guys. He's a really inspirational guy. He's a well-spoken guy. He has a great story. He's my friend. Happy to call him that. Check it out.
So I'll start out with, I guess, getting into my story, where I come from.
Yeah, so obviously you've got a group of followers, right? They know who you are. But there may be a big portion of our audience who maybe doesn't know exactly who you are. So first and foremost, tell them who you are, a little bit about that, and then jump into whatever the fuck you want.
All right. I'm Bonner Bolton. Grew up in a little small West Texas desert town, Odessa, Texas, and grew up out there with the coyotes and the pump jacks and the rattlesnakes.
Odessa's beautiful.
It's a beautiful place. Majestic in every way. And
a couple good bars
actually,
out
there is it's cool. Like West Texas has its own kind of desert beauty, and there's something about going back there for me, even though I don't live there anymore. I really love going back there, and I go help my dad on the ranch. We got a bunch of buck and bull cows that we raise out there and do some ABBI stuff, and I go back there and we work the cattle out there on the ranch, and it's something else to see a sunset out there compared to anywhere else. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, my sister she rodeoed for Odessa. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I spent some time out there, and I lived in Abilene for a little bit.
Nice, man.
So, I mean, it's all right there, but.
Well, yeah, so I grew up on a ranch out there. It's been there since 1903, and my family owns about 23,000 acres out there. And we run a lot of cattle, race some horses. My dad and my uncles have always trained horses, and my dad rode bulls, and that's kind of how I got into rodeo. So my dad rode bulls for about 20 years, I guess, and I grew up in New Mexico, and he grew up with Cody Lambert, Tuff Hedeman, Ty Murray, all them guys. They all knew my dad, you know, and he was kind of one of the names back then amongst guys that rode bulls, and he did really well in his own right. He kind of settled down early. He had a family, had me and my older brother, Brody, and we started out watching my dad's videos and pictures, you know, like going through the old photo albums, you know, and my dad was my hero, man, and I thought he was a superhero when I was a little kid, man. I wanted to be just like my dad. I'd be on the armchair, the couch, you know, riding bulls along with his old videos or riding a suitcase. And when I was about 4 years old, my dad won the George Paul Memorial 1991. And back then, that was like the biggest bull riding around. Like that's where kind of PBR originated from, BRO and PBR. All these dudes used to go down to Del Rio, Texas, and that was the George Paul Memorial. And George Paul was one of the greatest bull riders of all time. And he rode 78 bulls in a row. That's where he got his fame from. He was like all-time greatest legend in bull riding back then.
Right.
You know, kind of like Adriano Moraes or, you know, Silvano Alves or somebody like that now.
Right.
Just for their consistency and his track record, right? And so they named that bull riding after him down there in Del Rio. He was from Del Rio. And his brother continues to put that bull riding on every year. And it was a real cool thing, like being 4 years old, being down there watching. I remember walking down the street and my dad holding my dad's hand, you know, walking down there back behind the catch pens and seeing like a bull in the trailer, like a big old Bramer bull, and the stock contractors kind of, you know, easing on down to unload all their bulls and stuff, and just thinking like these are some giants, you know, like
right.
It was crazy. And watching your dad do something like that when you're that age, just old enough to really comprehend that, it really sets this, like, I just think it makes such an imprint on your mind and in your life, like when you're that young.
I mean, so that's got to be kind of one of those pivotal things. The fact that you actually have a memory from being 4 years old, not a lot of people do. But, I mean, that's probably what set up the framework for the path you initially took with your life, right?
For sure, man. And, I mean, I grew up on the ranch, too. So my uncles and my grandpa, they all, you know, I guess you could say I'm about a fifth-generation cowboy. And it's been passed down, and they're all cattle ranchers, you know, and before rodeo. Like, it's just my family was one of the first ones to settle out there in West Texas, and cattle ranching has just been in our family from many generations now. And so before I ever rodeoed or even knew much about my dad riding bulls, I was riding horses and going on cattle drives when I was 3 and 4 years old.
Right.
Freezing my ass off out there, just begging my dad to put me back in the pickup truck and turn the heat on, you know. And that's what I remember. And we gathered big pastures when I was little, you know, like there was 10 sections and more sometimes. I remember, I think the biggest pasture I ever gathered was about 20 sections. And we would be on a cattle drive just about most of the day before we got to the cattle working pens, and then started the branding process. And by the time it was done, it was sundown, you know. And that to me is a really special memory, because I know a lot of kids don't grow up that way anymore.
No, they don't. In fact, so I grew up on a horse ranch. My parents trained horses, so we didn't grow up on 23,000 acres. Like the most we ever had was 80 acres, right? But I have an aunt and uncle in Wyoming who've got like 100,000 acres or something crazy like that. So every summer
awesome.
we would
They
go.
got some big ranches up there.
Oh yeah, I mean we're talking same thing, 5th, 6th generation Wyoming ranch, but the same thing. So we would go up there. We would like take our colts, or I would go up there for the summer and do exactly what you did. So I can relate to that
Right.
a lot. You know, that was the highlight of my summer, was going for the branding?
So when I was about 4 years old, after my dad won the George Paul Memorial, he ended up quitting riding bulls not long after that. And it was just me and my older brother and him and my mom. And he got this random opportunity to go do Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in Euro Disney in France. And so he loaded me and my brother and my mom, and we loaded up and we moved out to France for about a year. And I lived right outside of Paris, France, in a little town called Meaux, Paris. And we went out there, and my dad was, just like any bull rider, I'm sure, and I've had to deal with it now since, having to retire in my own career, but he was itching for that next thing to replace bull riding, and that seemed like it to him and my mom, and they sold everything they had. They got debt-free, and they moved out to Paris and got this job, and all these French scouts came to the U.S. and scouted all these Native American Indians from real reservations and real cowboys from ranches and real cowboys from rodeo. And this was 1992, I want to say, because my dad won that bull riding in 91. And then he started, he got hurt a few times real bad right there at the end of his career. He got the shit hooked out of him in Pecos and got knocked out in Denver, in fact.
Oh, no shit.
At one of the first BROs they ever had. And he decided to hang it up at about that time and decided, hey, I'm going to go do this thing in Paris that I got offered at a pro rodeo. And so we go out there, and it's cool, man. Like, I don't know, how many of your listeners or anybody that's been to a Disneyland, but in Euro Disney at that time in 1991, they had this amazing arena set up, like where it was a canyon backdrop, and they had this sheet that pulled down over the back of the arena, and like the sun and the moon came out at night, and the sun came up in the morning, and like they had these different scenes and stuff they reenacted, right? And they had all these cowboys that represented different states, and they had all these games they would play with the audience, and it was real interactive and everything. So much fun when you're a kid, like my age, 4 years old. It's kind of like medieval times, what you could say our American version of that would be medieval times. What we do over here.
Okay, so basically what they were doing is they were taking the Wild West and putting it over
there.
there.
Live dinner theater show.
Kind of like a Renaissance festival type thing. Then.
Absolutely, but totally themed in the Wild West, right? And as a kid, man, it was like one of the most awesome things you could ever imagine, because these Indians, the wardrobe that they gave the cowboys and the Indians was so authentic. It was like being on the set of a really cool Western movie. Every time you walked on set there on Disney, like just the backdrop in the arena, the canyon, it was real rocks, like the way they formed everything. And you had these two tunnels that kind of came out on each side of the backdrop of the canyon. And like, there was this like animated coyote that would go run up on the canyon and howl at the moon, and like they'd fog the arena out and do this run with the buffalo kind of thing. And the Indians would come out there and like pretend like they were hunting buffalo, and they'd do all this dark lighting and lights and thunder and lightning and stuff. And it was just like the coolest thing you've ever seen, really, like live theater. And yeah, of course, Buffalo Bill looked really, really authentic. They had like a couple different Buffalo Bills they used, a couple different Annie Oakleys, and they reenacted it just like Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. I mean, they had all the same stuff. And I remember my dad was doing this part where he started learning how to drive the stagecoach, and they would do this reenactment of like a stagecoach attack from the Indians, right? And he learned how to drive the stagecoach around the arena. And I remember they used to have like these harnesses that would spring an arrow up, like pretending like the Indians shot them, right? And they would be going around the arena, and the Indians would dismount and like jump on the stagecoach. And sometimes they would let me and my brother ride in the stagecoach during the show, like during the Indian attack. And like one of my most memorable stories from that time, my mom always tells it because I don't remember it, but she said I fell asleep in the stagecoach during the Indian attack. And I used to be narcoleptic. I just pass out anywhere. But that was one of the coolest things in my life that I think really like maybe set a whole different perspective on my life from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be... So when you grow up on a ranch, what ends up happening with you just out of default is you're very sheltered, right?
Right.
And it's a good kind of sheltered,
Yeah.
but you're sheltered from the world. So for you to get kind of plucked out of West Texas ranch life and go to Paris, France, and be in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show at a freaking Disney resort, I mean, I can't think of a bigger... I mean, okay, so they're both kind of Western-based, but that's a huge... I mean, it's no wonder you remember it so well, I guess.
It's not like a normal childhood. You know, you have a lot of these vivid memories. I remember one of the first things we did was go to the beach when we got there, right? And my parents didn't know where we were going. They didn't know how to speak French. My mom was learning at the time, and she ended up being able to speak French pretty well, but at the time we were new, you know, and we got there and we go to the beach and my parents are all gung-ho about it and they take us, and sure enough, sure as shit, we come to a nude beach our first time around. And me and my brother, you know, my brother's about 8 years old. I'm 4 or 5 years old, and we're running on the beach, and I literally remember this old lady asking us to rub lotion on her body.
Oh, Jesus.
and she's an old, you know, nothing against, you know, with all due respect, it's just this old lady, you know, and me and Brody looked at each other and we're like, what the fuck?
Wait,
Like,
so all right, so this is the important part of the story. Did you do it?
No, we definitely ran back to mom and dad at that point.
Right.
And we were like, and I think they were like, that's when we all started realizing, man, we're not on a normal beach. This is Europe. This is full-fledged
France, most of all.
Paris,
Yeah.
France.
Okay, so well, how long did you guys live there?
We lived there for about a year.
Oh, so it was pretty short term.
It
then.
was short term, so I didn't have to really go into their school system or anything. And actually,
Did your brother though? Because he was 8 years old.
no, and he was in second grade when we left. So my mom actually started homeschooling him, and I started
okay.
doing preschool kind of like at that same time with my mom. And so she started homeschooling us. We moved back to the ranch, and we did homeschool for a little while. And then once we got up into our older grades, we started doing some other stuff and going to public schools, and then went off to college, you know, and we had all that same experience, but we grew up working on the ranch with my dad most of the time, and kind of learned practical skills growing up, and did school in the morning, you know, and we're able to leave and go to rodeos on the weekends and stuff like that. So I can't say we ever really missed out on public school education because we didn't want it, you know. Like,
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because that's what you find with a lot of rodeo kids.
mhm.
A lot of them do homeschool.
Yeah, it's and a lot of them really learn a lot of practical skills early on. And I think what's crazy about now in the pandemic and everything that we're going through, a lot of parents have had to experience what that life's like and trying to teach your kid how to learn. And
yeah,
I think
it's not easy.
It's not easy, but I think it's a really good thing overall because number one, it really gravitates families closer to each other, and you have to spend more time with each other. You have to be around each other more. You have to get to know each other more. Where nowadays, like, we live in such a fast society where it just the everyday, you know, repeat the you know, the tradition of the American dream and the family is everyone's so disconnected now through technology, or everyone, you know, going through their cycles of a work, job, school. You know, nobody spends very much time with each other, and when they do, they're all looking down at their phone, you know?
Well, and it's scary if you do have kids, even if they're really young. I've got really young kids, but you have to be really careful because they turn into these like dark under-eyed screen-looking zombies because that's what the world you brought them into. And they're not impressed by anything anymore. Like me, I would be impressed by a coyote running across the field and like wanting to chase it with a 22. Like if it's not a full-blown Mario explosion, my kid doesn't give a shit.
Yeah,
You know
well,
what I mean?
that was the life me and my older brother had growing up. Was, we rode ponies bareback and played cowboys and Indians and used to, shoot BB guns at each other.
Used to do that too.
Running across the prairie, and that doesn't happen anymore hardly ever unless you grow up in a ranch family somewhere out on a big ranch, and big ranches are less and less nowadays.
Well, it's not like you could get one. If you were aspiring to go and your dream was to get a 23,000 acre ranch, okay, cool. Give me your $10 million and I'll find it.
That's not everybody's childhood, and I realize how very much privileged in that sense I was growing up. I was very sheltered and very privileged to have that ability, but it also taught me, my parents, I can say hands down, are some of the most real down to earth people you could ever meet. And just taking us to Europe and doing all that stuff when we were young, and then coming back, like, they taught us real world views at a very young age, how to be understanding and accepting of people that are from a different culture, and because we moved to a whole different country, and my parents, I can say, of all people, have taught us the importance of accepting people of all different cultures, all different skin colors, all different races. And it doesn't matter what you do, what your job title is, it's who you are, And that was one of the cool things about spending so much time around my mom and dad, was they really, showed us the importance of all these things, which you don't get in public school nowadays.
No, and nor are you allowed to explore. You're not even allowed to explore the diversity.
There's no adventure. There's no field trips are less and less. Like, you don't hear of many schools going on field trips anymore.
No, I mean, it's a weird way that they're trying to indoctrinate children into whatever this society is nowadays, and it's, I think something that parents need to learn, because people just kind of fall in line with where they're told to go. I mean, we're seeing it right now.
We are very much so, like, I don't know. It's crazy because of my childhood and the way that I was taught growing up is so abnormal to what the standard quo is in society today, and what even kids experienced in my lifetime, like at that age, like, and it was so out of the box that kids my age didn't know what to think about me when I was, that age, and meeting different kids, whether it was at, different rodeos or like just my other friends I knew from town or whatever, and I don't know. I always felt, obviously different and out of pocket from those kids. And I know that they struggled with the day-to-day things that a lot of public schools struggle with. A lot of cliques, a lot of people choosing sides and people being racist or whatever, on the west side of town, or the rich kids on the northeast side of town or whatever. But in the town where I grew up, it's a really rough town, and you're either oil field in West Texas hardcore, or you're super rich and own the oil field and hardcore.
That's West Texas. And go get a hotel in Odessa. Fuck.
Yeah, and it's like there's a lot of people get shot out there, and a lot of people get stabbed out there, and growing up out there, you learn real quick, like, there's all kinds of people that fluctuate to our town, and all kinds of cultural backgrounds and everything from all over the world. And growing up out there, besides just the real life world experience my parents gave us traveling around, like, it's cool growing up out there in West Texas. You learn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so you and I both grew up on ranches. We're both rodeo kids. We both grew up in that same lifestyle, but where we're different is me and my sisters went to a giant school.
Mm-hmm.
Because we lived right on the outside of a town.
Like a big 5A school, or
it was a 5A school. Yeah, 5A school. And we were like one of the only ranch families out there, right? Because it was pretty urban, but we were just right on that edge. And it was a different experience for sure. And everything you're talking about, like the cliques and those things, that's all it was. I mean, it was a rough town. It was a shit school. But I mean, actually, we had a great time.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I've talked about this on other podcasts, but normally, like, the idea of being you rodeo, you come from that Western background, you're really proud of that, right?
Absolutely, man.
We hit it.
Would never take it back.
Yeah, we hit it. I particularly, like, didn't tell
They
people I
wanted to call
rodeoed
you
in
the shit kickers and the redneck, or
well, because there's always that group of rednecks, right? And they're never accepted. And for me, I was like, well, I'm not going to be that, so I'm just going to blend in over here. And
I remember when I was in high school, my buddy Sean Hogg, shout out Sean Hogg. He went to the NFR. He's a really good bull rider,
right?
And we grew up in the same town. We were best friends growing up. Me and my brother and him, we were all good friends. And he grew up on the west side of town. He grew up really rough, man. And,
did he?
Oh yeah, man. Sean fought a lot of guys all the time in high school. You know, there's a lot of different ethnicities and stuff going around, and he was the minority out there. Where we live, whites are the minority 100%. And Sean grew up tough, man, and I remember just like him telling me these stories all the time about high school and junior high, and he took me one night after the football game, Permian high school football and Broncos, right? Friday Night Lights is the biggest football town in Texas, pretty much.
Right.
Like, they made a movie about it. And Friday Night Lights is a true kind of documentation of our culture out there. Football is king, man, in West Texas.
All Texas. So it's
all
religion
Texas.
Here. Yeah.
Now in America, period, football is king. But like, I want to say, like, it truly does originate out there. Like, people really started glorifying football mostly out there back in the 80s, back at that time. It just got really popular with those college or high school teams at that time for whatever reason, and it just started kind of firing up out of there. But when I was in high school, it's true, man. Like, Broncos, they were the west side of town. Permian, east side of town. And when they played each other every Friday night, like that one game out of the year, man, you could sure enough bet on some fist fights going down in the town, dude. Like, everybody, you could barely get out of the parking lot before it started happening. And it was just always town rivalries. And they had this one little lot, and it was on the drag. It was on the strip. And Andrews Highway, if you know Odessa, we're at the same highway that the college is on. They had this little corner, and it was always down by the Whataburger, and they called it Kicker's Corner, and that's where all the rednecks fought. And the rednecks would fight the Mexicans, and Mexicans would fight the blacks, and we was all, you know, it was
really segregated down there.
Oh yeah, man! Like, our town was very segregated, and it was always wild. It's always been Wild West.
Yeah, isn't that funny how there's like this weird street fighting culture in high school? That's how our school was. Like, if you didn't have friends, if you wanted to become popular, go win you a street fight, and the next Monday,
like,
you're good.
All high school would be looking forward to this shit every Friday night, and they knew exactly where to go, and everybody would park their trucks, and we would all get outside, and we would all stand around, and like, it was kind of scary, but I liked it, you know. And all my friends were tough as fuck, and I didn't ever get into it with anybody out there in that kind of instance. I did get into plenty of scraps growing up, but it was never a ranged high school fist fight. Like, hey, I'll see you at fucking lunch, motherfucker. You know,
dude, okay.
Like,
so I don't like that. I got to tell a story here, and everybody who went to my high school, because I think I have a lot of people who probably listen now, going to remember this. But I mean, that was our currency in high school.
Yeah.
Street fighting, that was how you fucking did it. And it's really funny because both my sisters, Ivy's been to the NFR 4 times. Paige could have been to the NFR 10 times if she wanted, but she likes to do other things. And anyway, we were all in high school together, like within a year of each other the whole time. So we hung out in groups, but I lived with my dad, and this is so crazy. He made me go to a religious school and all that. Okay, I got thrown out of there, and then I got to go to school.
You went to Catholic school?
No, a Christian school, but I got my ass kicked out. Actually, twice.
Why? Did you, you didn't pay tithe?
I did not pay. Still don't. Yeah, don't tell Corey Ross. But dude, it's funny. I'll get off this in just a second.
Okay,
But it was
all right.
so freaking funny because I
don't think you're going to hell still.
You don't think so?
No, if that counts, I don't know. I hope not.
Huh. Why, are you worried about yourself?
Well, let's not talk about that. We'll save that for the next
podcast,
Okay.
dude, I'm good.
That's a whole nother chapter.
That's the beauty of being the host of the show is you don't really have to talk about any of your shit.
No.
You can just sit back and judge.
I would
the
like
other
to interview you real quick.
Yeah, no shit. Anyway, so I was not popular when I got to school. My sisters were, I was not. People fucking hated me for whatever reason. I did pretty well in high school with the girls. I think that's probably why. But all it took was one fist fight. I'd never been in a fight in my life. It just happened to go all right for me. Next thing I know, good for the next 3 years of high school. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
One fist fight. And it was arranged, and I was told either you show up or we're going to jump your ass. It's like, I guess I got to show up.
Yeah.
And it worked out okay for me, and next thing I know, everybody liked me. So high school is a weird place. That's the point.
Still got your lunch money. That's all that matters.
Yeah, we were pretty broke. I didn't have much lunch money to begin with. I think I won some out of that fight, believe it or not. Have you guys ever played fantasy football, fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, fantasy whatever? Well, now you can play fantasy bull riding. Rank Ride is the PBR's official fantasy sports app, guys. Go to rankridefantasy.com, sign up through the store, rankridestore.com, to get your membership for a chance to win big cash prizes and giveaways. Guys, Rank Ride is changing the way you interact with PBR bull riding. It is one of the most exciting endeavors I think we've ever seen. rankridefantasy.com and rankridestore.com to check it out.
You know, what y'all do is pretty raw and authentic.
Yeah.
Without being overboard. And
Exactly.
most people that listen to podcasts are mature enough to hear the adult side of most people's stories anyway. And I don't know. I think what y'all do is really, really important to Western culture. I
mean, that's kind of been the whole goal from the very beginning. I mean, I personally been planning this for 2+ years and was just kind of scared to start it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, there's so many great people, not unlike yourself, who have great stories, great things to say that have never had a platform to do it. Or if they did, it wasn't a professional enough platform to do them justice.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the whole point, right? To kind of help grow and usher in a new generation of the sport and expand it, because rodeo's been so stagnant for so long. And
rodeo has been stagnant for a long time. And even I can say, you know, PBR has done a really great job with their partnership with Endeavor, amping up the live events and what people see when it comes to the actual performance of bull riding. But when it comes to the cultural surroundings of the sport and lifestyle of Western culture, there's not much new popping up, you know?
No. Well, kind of is right now, though. Like,
but
if you look
now,
at, right now. I mean, even look at that campaign you did with Tom Ford we were talking about. That, for them to kind of highlight and romanticize Western anything at a level the level that Tom Ford is, if you know anything about the men's fashion, high fashion world, Tom Ford's kind of the pinnacle of men's wear. It really is.
Yeah, he's the sharpest, most edgy, like, Ford. Well, I don't know if it's so much affordable, but
no, it's not.
He does have some things, I guess, that are, but then, you know, you have your really edgy lines of jackets and stuff like that are really upper echelon, and that has always been, I feel like, the most tangible, mainstream, like, masculine high fashion brand for men.
I mean, it really is. And so this is something that
and a lot of cowboys like it. Like, a lot of cowboys do like it. They like his sunglasses. They like I know people that wear his stuff.
I mean, dude, it's the only sunglass brand I personally wear. It sucks that they're so fucking expensive, but they're worth it. They're good sunglasses. It's something that you don't see. In fact, let's be real, and you know this better than anybody. If you like a thing, that
right.
thing being rodeo, but then you also like this thing, we'll say men's fashion, you're gonna catch shit.
Yeah, fashion and rodeo, or fashion and cowboys, people like to disassociate because they're two totally different worlds. But cowboys at the nature of being a cowboy, I can say and you can say too, from growing up on a ranch, like cowboys take pride in how they look. Cowboys have always had a sense of fashion, and whether they like to admit it or not, like fashion's a huge part of being a cowboy. And
it is.
I was always enamored with my uncles and my dad and like my grandpa and how they crease their hats and just the genuine, raw, authentic part of their look. When we showed up to work cows that day, nobody gave a shit. We weren't getting filmed,
Right.
but guys would show up decked out, and that was kind of like growing up in West Texas. Guys really take pride in being a cowboy and showing, looking the part.
I mean,
not
they
just being the part, but looking the part too.
They do, yeah. And it's so funny because there's so many parallels with that, and then the world that you also have a lot of experience in. They may be different looks, right? And the price tag between a pair of Wranglers and a denim shirt and a Tom Ford suit's about the amount of a down payment on a good house.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still, there's parallels there. And one thing that's super important to me, and I know it is to you, is rodeo being, or the Western world being, more inclusive, right? Like, why can't you be?
Absolutely.
We end up talking about this on a lot of episodes because it's super important to me. But you should be able to be more than one thing and be welcome with open arms to rodeo in the West.
100%, man. I guess to kind of catch back up from where we left off was being 5 years old in Paris, France. But to speed it up to now, I grew up, I rode bulls. My dad taught me how to ride bulls at 10 years old. I started a professional career at 18, started riding CBR and PBR and pro rodeo at that age, in college rodeo, like all four pretty much.
You were trying to get on everything you could at that point.
Yeah, it didn't matter. And I was kind of just trying to fill out the route for me, which route was it going to be? And I had different influences from different directions. And real early on, I was thankful to win an association called CBR when I was about 20 years old.
Which is no longer an association.
No longer. PBR bought it out. And they kind of started doing this thing that was like a bull team thing. And that's what PBR bought. And now PBR owns that. But they were sort of like a filter system for anything pro rodeo or PBR, and an alternative. Tuck Hedeman organized that association along with PBR in its origins, like him and Cody Lambert and Ty Murray. And then Tuck Hedeman broke away and did his own thing with CBR. So I had early on recognition in the sport and respect amongst a lot of bull riders at that point. And then the next year, I really wanted to go for PBR, and I tore my bicep off the bone when I was 20 years old. And it took me about a year to get over that till I was 21. And once I started riding back, it took me about 3 years to really find my groove again. Like, I didn't know how to ride it the same way anymore. My arm didn't feel right. Like,
did you lose a lot of strength in your arm?
Yeah, I still can't, you can see right there, like I can't even bend my arm straight right there. And that's good compared to what it used to be, like I used to kind of have a bareback rider's arm. I'd always have to tape that thing like a bareback rider. And by the end of my career, I had really figured my stuff out, and then it all came down to it that day in Chicago when I broke my neck. I had just come off a really good performance at the World Finals. I made my first PBR World Finals and was on fire, riding really good. I can say I was honestly probably one of the best, if not the best, bull rider at that time. No, not to try to sound arrogant or anything, but I had dialed in my performance at that point to the point where all the other bull riders respected me. I know that, and I still have a lot of respect from these guys, and I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. But at the end of the day, gold buckle or not, I can look back on the sport I played, which is bull riding, and say, I lived it, I loved it, and I gave it my all, and I put it all on the line. I broke my fucking neck for that shit. And I laid it on the line for myself. I laid it on the line for my fans. Like, I looked at every ride as if it were my last at that point. I was ready to die every time I nodded my head. And the day that I broke my neck in the arena, I can say I might have died. Like, I might have literally died for a minute. Like, I literally, when I hit the ground, I nodded. I made one of the best rides. I made as good of a ride as I've ever made in my life on that little bull. He's a jam up son of a bitch. Little bull called Cowboy Up. Come out there and did his deal. I was the first rider out that day. And I remember when I came off that bull, I was trying to exit out to the side, you know, and the bull kind of flipped me up really high. And I did kind of a gainer. And I remember trying to look back, you know, and rotate over. And the next thing I knew, the ground hit. And it was sudden impact. And my hand sank in the ground. And we were in Chicago at the time. And as soon as my hand sank in the ground, for whatever reason, this is how crazy this story is, right? Like, we're in Chicago. That specific arena, they always use white sand. And that sand is so soft. It's like beach sand. And my hands literally sank all the way in the sand, and then the next thing that hit was my head. And I don't wear a helmet. I didn't wear a helmet at the time. And my cowboy hat, you know, kind of folded up, crunched. Then the next thing that hit was my forehead. And I didn't go out. Like, I didn't go unconscious. I knew what was happening. I could hear it in my body when I hit the ground, like a beer can crunch. And I knew immediately I had just broke my neck. You know, I couldn't feel anything below my neck. And I saw the bull come in, and I saw him start to charge over the top of me. I remember trying to lift my neck and lift my head up over the, you know, above the ground, and feeling this really fucking sharp pain. And instantly I felt this overwhelming like heat and sensation just rush to my neck, like just, and then all of a sudden, like, these colors started filling my mind and like my eyes, and like I went into this sort of like dream state vision, like where all of a sudden, like my life started rushing before my eyes. And where people say, like, you know, you have a third eye, like you have a vision.
Right. Well, see,
Like,
you know what's interesting is I've actually done a lot of research about that sort of thing. And when you have an experience like that where your body you almost die,
Yeah.
it's the
release of a chemical called DMT. Like,
DMT. Yep.
yeah, and Joe Rogan talks about it a lot on his
He
podcast.
does, a ton.
And he's a big believer in all that. And anyways, I know for a fact I've felt that, but it was from a natural occurrence. And what happened to me that day on the arena floor is nothing more than supernatural. Like, I literally broke my C2 vertebrae all the way clean through, where your spinal cord and all of your nervous system, like, it attaches and goes together. My bones broke all the way through, but that shit stayed together somehow, which is very rare. Like, the doctors told me I'm like less than 2% of all people they've ever seen that have had that kind of spinal injury that didn't end up decapitated or like, you know, totally paralyzed, you know, or like vegetabilized or dead.
Right.
You know, and it was just a miracle, right? Like, the people that handled me did everything they could in their power to handle me right. You know, shout out to anybody that might be watching me or this podcast that, you know, helped me that day in Chicago. I love you guys and I appreciate you. But yeah, it was crazy. I remember on the ambulance ride from the arena to the hospital, I remember everybody being really careful, rolling me over and doing a really good job of handling me. And I can't even, I mean, I just can't even put into words how much that means to me. And
I mean, it means your life.
yeah,
You know?
and those paramedics that took care of me in the ambulance, like, they saved my life. I think I was literally dying that day. I think I was supposed to die, probably. And all I remember is whenever, like, my life started flashing before my eyes, literally, like, when people say that, it's a real thing. When I hit the arena floor and my neck broke, and like all this chemicals started rushing in my brain before the paramedics got to me and the bull started coming over me, I literally relived my life in about a minute, you know. Like I remember seeing like things just flash before me like they were on fast forward on a video.
Right. And so
reel.
what I'm going to do real quick is explain to the listeners who probably don't listen to Joe Rogan talk about it in science what DMT is. So, you know,
Yeah.
DMT is a naturally occurring chemical that comes in your brain 2 times ever, and that's naturally when you're born and when you die. And those are the only times any living thing experiences those 2 things naturally. Now, there's chemicals that you can purchase to do that now, and actually a lot of people with PTSD use DMT to heal from those wounds. But what Bonner's talking about is he was so close to death that he actually had the chemical release from a gland in your head called your pineal gland, and you only experience that when you die.
It's like the
science
center
is
of
that.
your brain.
It is, but you only experience that birth and death. So for you to experience it, I mean, you actually were close to death.
I really believe I was very close to death, and I don't know how much of that chemical released in my brain, but I feel like something close to that effect happened to me that day, and I experienced something I've never experienced. I was seeing, like, I was feeling color, you know, like it was like there was these colors in my mind and I couldn't literally like see visually like between me and you, but I wasn't here between me and you. I was like on another realm. I was in the spiritual realm, and I was praying for my life to not end that day. And I knew exactly what happened when I broke that neck. And when I was going through this vision and things on the ground, laying face down in the arena, just sucking dirt, I remember just like praying to God for my life that day and just asking him to let me stay here for whatever he may have me here for. And thank God he did, you know, and I've been able to go on and live since then. And that week when I broke my neck, it took me about a week in the hospital. You know, they told me I was never going to walk again. They told me I was really, really slim chance that I would ever be normal, you know, and I'm here to say, thankfully, thank God, you know, I walked 4 days after that. I showed them, I got up out of bed and I told them I was going to walk, and I walked around that ICU floor and I showed them that shit. And then after that, I told them, y'all are going to see me, you know, y'all are going to see me walk out of here. And I walked up the stairs and I walked down, and I just thank God for the doctors that handled me. They did an amazing job. I thank God for his strength and just like allowing me to live again, you know, and it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me and everything to do with what I believe is God. You know, I don't understand God to the fullest. I'm not here to preach or be a rabbi, you know, or anything like that. I don't even know what God is fully, you know, but I believe in it, and who he is or what he is, that's for him to say, not me. And I'm really thankful that I'm still alive today to be able to tell this story.
I mean, I am too, man. When you see people getting wrecks, especially in rough stock, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't walk away from that thing, especially back in the days where people not wearing the helmet wasn't cool.
Yeah.
You know?
And I grew up in a time, like my dad rode bulls and he didn't wear a vest or a helmet, you know, and I kind of grew up in the last generation of cowboys that loved wearing, you know, their hat and riding hat down. We always called it hat down, you know, you pull your lid down, and that was, you know, that was like the ultimate extreme, you know, and the rush of it. That vest ain't going to save you from much, but neither, you know, at the end of the day, neither is the helmet if a bull wants to do enough damage. And I was kind of in that last generation of guys who, before every time they rode, was ready to die. Put it all on the line. Because when you're riding PBR, it's that extreme. It's that radical. Like, you're getting on the toughest bulls in the world that are ready to kill you, and you're one of the rankest riders in the world ready to die because you are ready to face that. But you're ready to try to ride it, not just look off, And so we see that now, and there's a whole new generation of riders coming up that wear the helmet, wear the vest, that train like a real athlete. And that was just really getting introduced into my generation right before all the new young kids like Jesse Lockwood and Keyshawn Whitehorse and like all these, up and comers, Mason Taylor, all the young kids coming up that are really, really savage,
I mean, they're amazing athletes.
They wear the helmet, they wear the vest. And there's some young kids I know I've seen that are coming from pro rodeo or somewhere else that like wearing the hat, but they'll switch over, like Clayton Sellers, for instance, from pro rodeo to PBR. I really love the way that kid rides. He really reminds me of my buddy Douglas Duncan when Douglas rode, and has badass style, dude. Like, really, really talented kid. I don't know him personally, but really talented bull rider. And I seen him do the PBR team challenge deal, and he put the helmet on to go ride PBR, because in PBR now it's a law. You have to ride with a helmet if you're born after like 1994 or something like that. And it's a great rule. I feel like it's a great law. I mean, every young bull rider should be wearing a helmet and all the protective gear they should get. It shouldn't be an ego thing.
No, I mean,
like, it's not.
As somebody who literally
it's dangerous
almost
as
died
fuck to ride bulls.
Did they tell you that
nowadays.
if you had had the helmet on, it would
I'm
have
endorsing
changed anything?
helmets. Yeah.
But what they told you, it would have changed the outcome
Oh,
of your
no,
neck? It probably
no.
couldn't have,
Here's
right?
the
With the way
thing,
you got in an accident?
Honestly, one of the craziest things about my thing is I landed so straight up and down on that dirt that day. Everything stacked up just so. If I would have had a helmet and it would have been a more blunt impact, it literally probably would have killed me.
Yeah.
Like, it was lucky I didn't have a helmet on that day.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because
and
it
it
wasn't
really-
caused by a run over.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I'd had a helmet, I probably would have ejected different, because of the weight differential. You don't know, like, you just don't know,
Right. Probably doesn't do you any good to think about that.
Coulda,
either.
woulda, shoulda. Yeah, exactly. And all you can do is just be thankful for where you're at in life, not where you could have been or would have been. And, ever since 4 months after my accidents, when the doctor told me I couldn't ride again, and he said, literally, if you ever land upside down again on your neck, it'll be like dropping a beer bottle on the pavement. Like, all that shit in your neck's going to shatter. Because we went in there and put a square metal frame with 4 bolts sticking through it, and you look like Frankenstein in there. Like, it's, you're lucky to be alive today. You're lucky to walk. You're lucky to blink at me. Like,
right.
And I've been very blessed beyond that, to gain more movement back and more mobility. And I do have my brain. I can think, I can talk, I can speak, I can act. And it may not always be the right way, but, I'm really thankful, and I know my parents are too. And we all thank God for me being here today. And, I know PBR is thankful, that I didn't die that day, and I've been able to represent them and go on and do things in the mainstream and put cowboys back in the mainstream of, I guess, of celebrities or whatever,
Well, and so that's probably my favorite thing about you, because there's a lot of bull riders, right? There's a lot of cowboys. There's a lot of world champions.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go NFR, there's world champions, a lot of times different world champions every single year out of all the events. And then, of course, there's a PBR world champion every year, and it's always going to be that way. What you don't see a lot which is a tragedy to me. And one thing that I'm really passionate about is cowboys who maybe they have an unfortunate accident, maybe they just retire, are able to transition into something else that they can have a good life off of. Because we all know world champions or great cowboys, or maybe cowboys who didn't quite reach their potential, who fizzle out, get hurt,
left behind,
they get old.
yeah.
Next thing you know, they're working at a feed store or something like that because they were not able to transition
Somebody's
to something
day hand
else.
on the ranch, or whatever, like just. Yeah.
But it's a tragedy, right? That some of the best athletes in the world or some of the greatest people in the world have nowhere to transition, or they choose not to. You took your shit situation, and now I think you should talk about, but you were able to transition and make something good out of something shitty.
Whereas most, let's say just this, like whereas most sports are multi-million-dollar contracts, PBR, bull riding, professional bull riding is still not. And it should be because of the death and the risk that.
Well, in rodeo, even less.
Like in the last 4 years since my wreck, I've seen two of my good friends pass away. One from suicide, Ty Posabon, rest in peace. I love you, man. And another one, Mason Lowe, died in the arena from performance.
Yep.
From a bull just fucking stomping his chest out. Like, literally made a good ride, landed up underneath him. Bull stepped on his chest and exploded his heart or his lungs or something. I don't really know exactly what happened to Mason.
Man, it's 2,000 pounds.
You got 2,000 pounds of bucking animal that's really doing some crazy movement. And the way these guys breed bulls nowadays, the genetics, I'm into genetics. I'm raising bulls and cattle with my dad right now, And I see the way this stuff goes, and I really understand from both sides, like, you're trying to push your animal athlete, but then the human athletes are trying to push themselves too. And there's a point where the animal athlete, number one, always has the advantage over the human athlete, no matter what degree we push it to genetically. Like, starting out, a human is always at the disadvantage. You're 150 pounds plus or less, and
a lot of guys way less.
that fucking bull's like 2,000 pounds plus or less. And no matter what the case, you're never evenly matched. And that's what people don't get about bull riding, like, or understand, is like you're defying the laws of nature to be able to withstand a ride on an animal like that, where the movement's out of control or unpredictable, and the sheer force and power and momentum and velocity of that animal is just so outmatches you as a human and your strength and ability to just hold on. But that's why it's like, I always tell people in the model world or entertainment industry, riding bulls is like a combination of martial arts, dancing, and gymnastics all in one. Like, that's the best way I can put it. You have to be able to handle yourself, but also be able to get handled, and keep rolling it out. Like, I always compare bull riding to any other extreme sport, like motocross or riding a skateboard or surfing or whatever, like it's all about taking that force that's underneath you and going with it and harnessing that and being able to sort of improvise, like the outcome. It's never fully planned. You can never dictate exactly what's going to happen. And all you can do is like your best in the moment and have that. I tell people you got to have that Bruce Lee chi, that Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's it with bull riding. And I think bull riding is definitely still our most dangerous sport in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The only other sport that comes close is cage fighting. I mean,
cage fighting or surfing, I'd say, because you have really unpredictable elements when it comes to the water as well. And motocross.
Yeah.
Motocross is so savage. I respect the fuck out of those dudes that...
Dude, it's brutal.
that can get up there and try to convince themselves they can do like a double backflip on a motorcycle. You know, I can't imagine. That takes so much commitment before doing it, just like nodding your head on Bushwhacker or Asteroid or any of the famous bulls nowadays, you know, Airtime or any of the great ones.
Right. When, you know, after you recovered from your injury, the doctors say, hey, you can't ride anymore. I mean, was there this period in your life where you were just brutally depressed, where you were like, why me? Fuck my life? Or were you just pure thankful?
Yeah. So that's a really good point. I appreciate you bringing that up, because whenever I broke my neck, it was 3.5 months afterwards that I went to my last doctor's visit, and they told me, no, this is how it is. This is what we did to you. This is actually the reality, you know? And I'd been so doped up on pain pills and really just pain pills, you know, pain pills and muscle relaxers.
Probably no way
I couldn't
to avoid
get it.
that, right?
I promise you, I couldn't get enough pain pills and muscle relaxers at that time because of the pain. Imagine laying face up in your bed for 7 months. You know, well, really, at that point it was 4.5. But imagine laying face up in your bed, watching the ceiling fan go round and round while your neck grows together, and not being really to even able to fucking bathe yourself. You know, my ex-girlfriend had to help me bathe myself, had to help me eat. Like I didn't even know how to hold a fork the right way. And just the humiliation of all that, you know, and being able and just being humbled to that point where you were one of the top bull riders on PBR tour and winning and one of the best guys in the world to nothing. Like, your girlfriend has to help you bathe yourself and wash your crack. You know, like, it's a bad...
I mean, that changes your whole perspective on everything.
It really will change your whole perspective on life. And then when the doctor comes in and crushes all of your hopes of ever being normal or right again in terms of yourself and being able to go compete and be one of these athletes again that you were, and then breaking it down to you why, like, yeah, it's hard. And what's even worse is knowing deep down internally that, like, he's right and that you don't feel right waking up anymore. You know that shit gets out of whack just if you sleep wrong, you know, and knowing that if you ever take one good jerking again or one, you know, getting stepped on again, it damn sure might end you just because of how you feel normally waking up now. And that's the terms of agreement I've had to come to with myself and the sport. You know, my sport medically wouldn't release me, but even if they did, I couldn't justifiably release myself, even just knowing how I wake up every day and, like, what a struggle it is just staying in shape and working out, and how hard it is for me to, like, maintain, like, a good physical physique without totally jacking my body or my spine up. It's hard, man. It really is. And I have to be really careful with myself, whereas I used to do all kinds of extreme stuff. I used to love to snowboard. I used to love to wakeboard, wake surf, you know, mountain climb, whatever. You know, I used to love it all. And now I've had to totally, like, lifestyle change and really think about my neck, which where the first couple of years I really didn't think about it. In fact, I didn't want to think about anything. I just kind of wanted to die, honestly, getting back to your question. And,
yeah.
And I didn't care about myself anymore. You know, once all this shit kind of hit me, I really didn't care what anybody thought about me. And I still don't very much. But, you know, I certainly didn't at that time. I didn't care what I thought about myself. I didn't care about my own life. And for a couple, 2 or 3 years there, it took me a real hard time to get back around to the point where I wanted my life to be good again. I wanted it to be, you know, I wanted my life to mean something, because I didn't know what it meant after that. Like, I was lost, People may think, oh, that's extreme or, whatever. Well, fucking try being me, motherfucker. That's all I can say. Like, try going through that and breaking your neck and then getting thrown through the ups and the downs of life that life gave me. Try being given a celebrity position where you have to represent a whole demographic of people after your whole life just got stripped away from you. And you haven't even dealt with the mental trauma or physical trauma.
Right.
Like,
it's interesting and why some people I think can say that is because most people never had a thing like bull riding. Most people never will, right? So it's really hard for them to relate to what you lost.
Or even what it's all about, like anything. Like, just, it's so far removed from a lot of people just because, I was born into a different lifestyle. I can't help that. I was born into a different thing. But my dedication was next to none for that. Like, I was competing with the best in the world. I was beating JB Mooney in every round, like, not every round, I should say. Sorry, JB, but I was winning a lot of rounds against every bull rider on tour at the very top level of bull riding, which was like the NFL level of our sport. And at that point, it took so much dedication. It took so much commitment, and it still does, but our sport was being amped up at that point in time because of the lack of restrictions, and we were living in a different world than we are now, 100%. And there was no break. There was no ease up on the throttle for these guys, these stock contractors, these bull breeders, like the genetics and everything. It's just like being all amped up to the highest limit it can be. Like, from 2015 to 17, I would say, which was past my day because I got hurt in 2016. But I'd say from 2000 to 2015, the bull game changed big time. Like, you got, Born to Buck program coming along, and it changed everything. Like, the genetics and how people breed, and bull breeding's been around since even before 2000, but
well, they started treating it kind of like they treat racehorses.
Yeah, it got serious. It's
very similar. I mean,
a lot of money started getting poured into this sport.
Well, and the value of a bucking bull right now, I bet if you asked somebody back in the late 90s if they thought a bucking bull could go for six figures, I don't know if anybody would say, yeah, of course they will. So, I mean, it's...
well, I will say, didn't Big Bucks got purchased for $1 million or $1.5 million by Tom Teague, didn't he? That was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But you had, you had some big-time money men at that point. That's when they were doing the Mossy Oak shootout with PBR.
Right.
Which is a good thing to bring up because I think PBR should bring something like that back, which is where they have, this shootout round for a bull rider to match himself against a bounty bull, right? Where the money keeps collecting every time the guy doesn't stay on. The money that they put up for that ride rolls over to the next time.
That's a cool concept.
And it just continues to build. And if that rider ever, if that matchup ever connects and the rider stays on the bull, he gets all that collected money. The Mossy Oak shootout, sorry. That's what it was all about. They would just, have this kind of money rollover bounty round kind of thing for the guy that won the first round of the PBR that was going on that weekend, or maybe the average. Maybe it was the average winner. I can't really remember, but I remember one time Chris Shivers got on Little Yellow Jacket for, I want to say it was $1 million or something. That's how much the Mossy Oak shootout had built up at that point in time for that bull.
Right.
And, he didn't stay on, but that was the biggest build up matchup that PBR had offered to give out for one bull one ride at that time, maybe still to this day ever. And it should go back to that, man. I think because that's really captures the essence of what the sport's all about.
Well, and for the sport, not even just PBR, but rodeo in general, to get to the size where they can pay that type of money, because that's always going to be the biggest thing, is it takes a lot of money to do that. I mean, the Americans done an amazing job with what they do. WCRA is coming on like crazy. Those guys.
I think it brings into the picture what the rest of the company is all about for PBR, which is Endeavor, and they own UFC also.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's important.
$12 billion value on it right now, something like that.
Yeah, and that's important to bring into the picture is they have so much money and so much capital and so much interest in bringing these paired matchups to the table for people to really bank on and look at. Like, they really do a great job of marketing far out for these matchups. And I see our sport going to that direction. And I think that is a good concept that PBR should bring,
well, and it goes back to the whole point of kind of the tangent that we've been on is the inclusion of people.
Mm-hmm.
The more people you bring in from the outside that you can get to appreciate the sport of rodeo.
Yes. Yep.
Especially with some of the people you've come in contact with, whether that be celebrity, whether that be high-powered people, you name it, it doesn't really matter, right? Somebody from outside the rodeo background, if you can bring them in, invite people in,
yep,
they grow an interest in the sport, begin to respect it. That's how you actually get to that level. It has to be so inclusive that everybody is invited in to appreciate it.
And that kind of brings it to rank ride right here,
right.
What I'm doing now. So, I went through the model stuff with PBR and going through Endeavor, through IMG, the agency that took me on. I was really fortunate to get to do some cool stuff there. And one of the first things I ever did was Saks Fifth Avenue. And then about a year later, that was kind of early on after I broke my neck.
Well, let's go back, right? Because before we get into that, like because we got into a deep thing about depression and you not wanting to live and all that. And then we kind of I could tell how passionate you got about the bulls and stuff, and we got off track.
Sure.
Let's go back to that and how you transitioned from, being in the hospital bed, being in that lowest of low for you. For you, that was your lowest of low, is how I read this. I mean, it would be anybody's, right? Let's be real. But how you transitioned. When you break
your neck and almost die.
That's it.
Become paralyzed. I don't think below the neck. I don't think you can really. I mean, learning to refunction your whole body from
the mic closer to you.
Learning to refunction your whole body from the neck down is not the funnest experience.
No. But so let's talk about getting from that point to transitioning to what you're about to talk about.
Yeah. So I guess after the doctors told me I couldn't ride anymore, that was a really deep dive for me. I didn't care. I wanted to take pain pills and muscle relaxers, and my girlfriend, she'd leave a bottle of wine in the refrigerator every now and then at the time, and she'd be gone to night classes, and I'd be off on them pain pills and muscle relaxers, and I would, definitely, I didn't know what state of mind I was in. I could barely make it to the refrigerator. I could barely make it to the bathroom. And if I could, sorry, Mom and Dad, if you're going to watch this, but, if I could, I'd try to make it to the wine bottle as often as I could and mix it with those muscle relaxers and pain pills, because I didn't, all I knew was you might fall asleep and never wake up. And I was going through so much pain at that point in time that I literally didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to watch the ceiling fan go round and round anymore. I couldn't watch any more fucking TV shows. Like, my life had come to such an abrupt change and difference and state of being that it seemed worth more like passing on than it did living at the time. And I'm ashamed to say it. I remember one time my girlfriend came home from her night classes. She was taking EMT school, and I had made my way to the wine bottle a few times that night, and I was on my muscle relaxers and pain pills, and I remember her ringing the doorbell for me to get up and go like unlock the door and shit. And I remember I was on my way from the bed to the door, and I literally collapsed like to my knees, and I like went blank, like totally black. And I don't know what happened. Like I just went out for a minute, and that's when I knew I had a real problem. Like I had a real serious problem, and I needed to get a hold of it. And I opened the door for her when I came back to. I got up and I got off the floor, and I was still in my neck brace at this point. Like I couldn't even fucking move my neck. And I remember I went to the door, and I opened the door, and I told her about all of it, and we got in this crazy ass fight that night, I remember. And I threw all that shit in the trash, and I told her I'm never going to do it again. And I haven't. I can, thank God, I can say today, this day, I've never taken another pain pill or muscle relaxer or anything like that. That was about 4 months after my surgery. And the doctors wanted to keep prescribing me shit and doing all that. But
as they do, yeah, that's how they get their money.
But I stopped, man, and I started going on walks with her every day. I started running, and her name is Alexis, by the way. Alexis Rupp, I appreciate you. You were an angel in my life at that time. But she helped get me healthy and well to the point physically where I could be on my own. But mentally, I was still really struggling. And unfortunately, things didn't work out between me and her, but I can give her so much credit for just hanging in there and being with me during that time of my life where I needed it so bad, and she was young and didn't know how to handle that. And for me, it was such a trial. It was such a trial to just regain myself and relearn like what life is and who I am, what am I supposed to do,
Guys, it's not audio only. The Gauge is on YouTube. Every single episode's on YouTube. We got 4K cameras, the best stuff. Check it out on YouTube if you want to see faces. Bright, smiling faces. We don't just use this lighting for nothing. We video it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. Lots of people are watching the videos, but not a lot of people are subscribing. Please help me. Help us. Help the Gauge. Subscribe on YouTube.
Where were we?
It's a good question. That was one of our longer breaks. And the thing that you people back at home or in your truck more than likely don't realize is we take these breaks. And what we're doing when we're taking those breaks is filling our drinks.
Yeah.
That's why
just a little sip.
Sounds a little weird the later this goes.
I think where we were was talking about the sport, and then we circled back to the dark time I went through.
Yeah.
With the medicine and being on pain pills and muscle relaxers, and thank God I made it through that and did not shoot myself. I remember one time my girlfriend having to take away my guns and hide them, and at that point, kind of along with, I think it was about that same night, around that same time, that she came home and I collapsed on the floor. It was all during that same time. And my buddy Chad, who's in the studio here with us today, Chad Michaels, thank you for being here. He is witness to a lot of that hard time I went through during that time to now. And, thank God for good friends like him and buddies who've stuck by me, like Chase Outlaw and my buddy Douglas Duncan and Matt Triplett. Shout out to you boys for helping me get through that time and being here with me now. I don't have too many friends from then that I have now. And these guys have been with me, and some of them have even, come in on the business that I started, which is Rank Ride, and put their name behind it, like Matt and Chase Outlaw. And, I can't say how much that means to me, man.
Absolutely. I mean, isn't that funny? Like, the older you get, the less friends you have. It's a weird thing.
It is really, man. You see who was there for the long run rather than the good time, and I could tell you so many stories about being Chase Outlaw, man. Do you want to know one?
Yeah, dude, tell me something.
What do you want to know, man?
Well, you got so many stories, and I don't know anything about them. Pick the
Okay.
raunchiest story you got.
The raunchiest story about me and Chase Outlaw. That's a good one. You're gonna thank me for this, Chase. You're welcome. All right.
You might have to come on and defend himself.
I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of tell you the whole history between me and Chase Outlaw. Because you can't just tell one story. You kind of have to tell the whole thing. And me and Chase met each other. The first time I saw him was in Monroe, Louisiana. He rode a bull called Black Mamba of Jesse Hills, I want to say. Or no, Harlan Robinson is who owned that bull. And he went to the NFR a few times. That bull bucked me off 3 times. There's not too many bulls I can say that about. But this son of a bitch bucked. A big old black strong son of a bitch. And Chase rode him at 17 years old. Not even legal to be riding at the pro level, and faked his entry that night at Monroe and rode him, and he placed that night at the bull ride, and he rode both his bulls, I'm pretty sure. But just a badass from day one. And the next time I saw him, I had nothing to do with him at that point, but the next time I saw him was in Pecos, Texas, down the road from where I grew up, West Texas. Out in the middle of nowhere. Pecos is known for being like the first rodeo that it was ever born on this earth, maybe. I don't know. And
I think it's that and Deer Trail, Colorado as a sign.
There's a few of them that claim it, but Pecos is one of those that claim being one of the first rodeos, right? And we were out there, and it was around the 4th of July, open bull riding, and I see Chase out there, and I remember his name because who can forget a name like Outlaw? And I'm out there, and I had a camera, in fact, at the time, and I was trying to film some stuff. And I remember being there, and I was coming off of surgery, I want to say. I had an elbow surgery or something, and I was just hanging out, right, with some of my buddies that were entered at the open bull riding. And this is like Pecos is about maybe an hour and a half from Odessa, where I grew up. And go down there, and I meet Chase. He wins the bull riding that night, and it's a 2-day bull ride, and he wins it both nights. And we partied that night, and I know who he is for sure at that point. And then the next day, and we talk about, all right, I'm going to meet you at Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the CBR that next week, because he's trying to get down there. And he said, come through Stephenville, Texas, and pick me up. So I do, and I just remember going down to Chase's car, and he had like no hood on his car, and like this little white piece of shit. I don't know what it was even, man. Like, but I can't even say, man. Like it was a white car with no hood on it. And I come through, and I pick him up in Stephenville the next week. And I'm pretty sure he was, let's just say he was living with some choice characters at the time. I don't feel it privileged to even say what or who, but like he was cleaning their pool at the time. And like, you're welcome, Chase. He was one of the rankest bull riders on earth at the time, and nobody knew who he was. He was living in a house full of dog shit, cleaning somebody's pool when I picked him up. And you're welcome, Chase. And here we are. He's a legend and a rock star, and as well he should be. His dad and his mom raised him to be the man he is today, and he's one of the most humble, discipline-driven warriors you'll ever meet in your life. Like he is literally one of the most hardworking men I've ever met in my life. And I've been through the Ozark Mountains with this dude. He took me on a trail ride one time, and like our back poles and our tents were like dragging the mountain, and it's gnarly up there where he grew up, man. You don't think of the Ozark Mountains as a rough place, but it really is. And I've been there. I've camped with him, and just you want to get introduced to the wild, go out camping with Chase Outlaw, man. That's all I can say. Or go to the national chuck wagon races. In
Dude, those chuck wagon races are pretty dope.
I can honestly say that's probably some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. You go out to Clinton, Arkansas, about August every year. You'll run into a good time out there at the chuck wagon race. You're not going to find much better than that.
Probably not. It's Arkansas. Jeez. So let's kind of get back to what we were talking about, right? So now we're in a really pivotal point, and usually we aren't telling like people's stories. So this is a fun thing to do because normally it's just like me kind of guiding a conversation that makes no sense, and then it turns out into something really entertaining.
Story time.
But this is cool because it's almost like a biography.
Ties.
I don't know. Is it biography when you tell it yourself, or autobiography? One of you guys knows. None of you guys know.
either way, it is my life, and Chase Outlaw had a big part to do with that.
Absolutely.
When I met him in my early 20s, and now here we are. Fast forward after my wreck, back to the point. Here I am doing what I'm doing now. Like I've been doing the model thing for a little while. I did the Dancing with the Stars thing for a little while. Is there anything you want to ask about?
Well, okay, so that's something you can't just kind of brush over and brush into, right? You can't be like, I did Dancing with the Stars and I did modeling, but first I was a bull rider and a homeschool ranch kid. Like there's some shit from I was contemplating suicide to getting into those opportunities. Let's talk about that and just kind of bridge those two gaps before you talk about those
for sure, man. Going back to the dark times I was having, right after they told me I couldn't ride no more and life was kind of pretty much fucking over for me. I had to, I don't know. I didn't know what I had to do. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything. I barely knew what my name was. And I just kind of kept living. And like I said, thanks to my ex-girlfriend at that time who was taking care of me, I wasn't living at my parents. I wasn't under any kind of hospice or anything. She was taking care of me, and she was young, and she didn't really know how to take care of me, and she did. And I really appreciate it. Thanks to you, Alexis, I'm still alive today, and I'm here now, and she taught me to be strong on my own. And now, since then, I've had a lot of good people intervene into my life and give me opportunities. And I think it was a lot of people who saw the pain and the ache of the missing out of my life that was there when I got hurt, right? Like I was striving for everything, working for everything, and then it just got totally just ripped out from under me like a carpet. And thanks to PBR, they had a big hand in to do with that. They set me off on this modeling journey to do. How that all came about was I took some pictures at the World Finals the year before I got hurt, and they picked about 12 different dudes to do that. And the lady that came and took the pictures, her name was Cass Bird. She's one of the best photographers in the world. Shout out Cass Bird. She is super cool. She set up her little deal in the middle of the arena, and we had this shoot. And I remember me and my buddy Neil Holmes, shout out Neil Holmes from Houston, Texas. We were back to back in this photo shoot, and Cass Bird was blasting all this gangster rap and all this shit. And we, here we are doing this cowboy shoot for PBR in the middle of the arena. And she's taking it back to like 90s rap in the deal. And it was fun. It was cool. And anyways, the guy that runs IMG, who is sister companies to PBR, saw these photos of all the cowboys and everything. He liked them all. He liked all the dudes, and didn't really know who to pick, even after that first time. And then I ended up breaking my neck after that. So it was like they had a selection of dudes to pick from, and they weren't sure who to pick because they were all great, right? But I ended up breaking my neck, and that was like the biggest story of all of them. that they picked for that shoot. And that's how they ended up choosing me. It wasn't because I was like the best looking dude or whatever. It was just like,
Good story.
they had something to use, right? And that's kind of what was cool. And I was willing to tell it. I was willing to be vulnerable and share the real experience like I am now with you.
Right.
And that's something I feel like I owe everyone, honestly, after almost losing my life and now having it. Like, I don't think I should take anything for granted or hold anything back, and whether it be good or bad, it's all there and it's real and it's me. And I can't take it back. No one can. A lot of people have misjudged it since doing it and doing the model thing, but that's what life gave me after bull riding. And so going back to your question, after bull riding and going through that whole deal in that shoot and breaking my neck, it wasn't until the next year, 2016, after that 2015 finals where that shoot was done, that the president of IMG, Ivan Bart, shout out Ivan, asked me to be a part of the agency before I was even out of my neck brace. That should be known to cowboy culture. Like, those people over there didn't even know if I was going to be good for life. Like, didn't even know if I was going to be some psychotic motherfucker that might not ever, get good again. And I'm still questioning that myself, but like, here I am. And these people did not know if I would be able to execute anything, like, period. Didn't know if I was motor functional enough to even get around or do what they wanted me to do. But they gave me that opportunity, and that's what sparked enough inspiration in me to honestly want to be good for life. Like, it inspired me to want to be functional again. Before I was functional,
Right.
Before I was functional, and that's huge. That's huge.
Which is
man.
kind of like counterintuitive to what you would think the industry would be, because it's known as chew you up, spit you out, but they kind of set up a thing for you.
You're looking at a liberal industry of people that do not normally like coincide with cowboy values and conservative beliefs, right? And so here I am on this parallel plane where I'm riding like this weird line, right? Because of where I come from and this industry. And I'm someone all of a sudden that they value, because of my story or that plus my looks or whatever, and they feel like they can use it all of a sudden. And I'm okay with that because I know my story is not something that should be taken for granted or that I should take for granted. And I feel like I owe it to the world to tell it, right? And that's what I'm here still doing today, and I'm really thankful for where that's gotten me because it took me breaking my neck to do it, and it wasn't the way I really wanted to roll out my life. It's not by my choice that I landed the way I did and I broke my neck, but it is what my life gave me. And here I am doing the best I can with it. And for all those who are cowboys and cowgirls that don't agree with it or don't think I've done justice by them, my apologies. I don't know what I can say or do to make it right other than I am who I am and I'm me, and I'm who God made me to be. And I'm not ashamed of that. And for that, I don't apologize, and I grew up in a world of art. My mom was an artist. I love art. I grew up, I went to school at Texas Tech for art, and I love all different forms of art, whether it's photography, film, or painting and drawing like my mom did. That's what I love the most. Pastel, that's what she was the best at. I always wanted to be good at that. Still not. And I respect all different forms of art. I kind of finally grew in love with music the most. That's my favorite form of artwork. Even though I love film and photography, because that's what I've done in the last few years. That kind of gave me a crash course on hand of what film and photography are like. But music is my favorite thing. And most people don't know that because I don't really advertise it much. But one day I hope to showcase that. It's really not the right time right now. I'm trying to run a business and, build this company called Rank Ride that you see here on me right now. It's for bull riders, by a bull rider, for bull riders, and I built this company with PBR, with them side by side, to try to do something in the industry that would disrupt and change things for the bull riders, because bull riders have always been the lowest end of the spectrum when it comes to payroll. Really, at the end of the day, the sport collects so much more money than bull riders do. And, now that's starting to change, and we're about to see that change in our sport because of my company. Honestly, I'm not trying to take bragging rights or overstep my boundaries here or disrespect PBR by no means, or even PRCA or any other organization. But fantasy sports is now twice as big as any actual sport that they game around. That's statistical facts. It is what it is mathematically. Like, I can't help that.
Yeah, the stats are the stats.
The stats are the stats. And there is nothing in our sport or in the realm of bull riding for fantasy sports other than what we just created, which is Rank Ride. And we plan to be the next DraftKings of Western sports and culture. And we have PBR support now, thankfully. We've been going through multiple rounds of testing with our algorithms and our platform and our application that we're excited to release this product coming up in August. And I think fantasy sports has done something great in general for all sports, mainstream or non-mainstream. Like, there's all kinds of fantasy sports platforms out there around different sports and different things, but mainstream fantasy sports has grown to become twice as large as the actual sports they game around, because it's so fun when you have something riding on a game, like your favorite home team game or your favorite riders and your favorite bulls, and in the case of our platform, you get to pick both, and you get to pick 6 riders and 3 bulls to play for your team throughout the weekend. And it's a lot more fun to watch bull riding when you got something, you got a fantasy team that's winning for you that weekend.
Well, and I think that it's such an interesting concept because it works so well with the sport, especially the way they have PBR set up. I mean, it pairs perfectly with it. So, I mean, that's a brilliant concept.
It's never been done. And, for as long as horse racing's been around, for as long as horse racing's been around, we've never had anything for the bovine sports or, rodeo in general, except for Pro Fantasy Rodeo, which they've done a really badass job, who I would love to work with one day with Rank Ride. But now, PBR market and Pro Rodeo market are totally different.
There's an ocean between those two at this point.
There's an ocean between those two, but as a PBR bull rider, it just made sense to go for PBR market. And no one was doing that. Pro Rodeo was already doing, or Pro Fantasy Rodeo was already doing rodeo. So here we are in the PBR market about to launch this app. And the reason I started doing this, right? I'm not a tech genius. Nobody needs to look at me like I think I own tech, because I don't, right? I don't own tech. But through what I've been able to accomplish in the sport and the things I've been able to do in the industry, I've come across really, really great connections. And the team that came together for me is remarkable, man. Like I'm so thankful. It was really such a blessing. I came through this team through a rodeo photographer, Christy Burleson, who I have to thank in California. One morning I went for coffee and to get a little haircut before the rodeo that day at the American that happens here in Dallas every year, right? And these people whose house she was staying at were program software expert developers, right? And I had already had the mock-ups. You know, I started on this project about 3 years ago, and about a year and a half into it, which was last year, I finally met some people who could kind of bring it to fruition in the programming world. I had the right artists and the right, you know, kind of brand builders help me build the brand and the art and the mock-ups, but in the concept, but I never had, I hadn't quite reached that threshold of finding the right program team and all that stuff, right? And I was a little bit in the dark when it came to that because I'm not an expert, like I said. So I'm here at this lady's house, you know, who I didn't know. I'm having coffee with this lady I know. And she said, well, here's so-and-so. And she came in and it turns out her and her husband are now my lead tech developers, you know, Miss Lori Hornback and Bert Hornback. Love you guys. Thank y'all for supporting me this whole time. But, you know, they're experts in the field of programming, software development. They've worked for Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and NASA, you know, the Air Force. They've been in this space for a long time, and I had a really good team, and they helped me develop my team to come in and build this app. And then we got PBR behind it once they saw it built and they saw what we've got. And then now they've come in behind it to help it, you know, push out to all their fan base. And this is the first actual iPhone app and Android app and web-based application that's ever been built for the sport. So we literally did something that's never been done before. And thankfully, these people are, you know, really keen to the Western sports industry. They've been in cutting horse industry for a long time, equine sports. Not only were they experts in software development, but they love, you know, Western, you know, cutting horses and reining and all of the equestrian sports that are out there, right? And they've been breeding horses for a long time. And so they kind of understood our sport already. They already knew, they had a good feel for Western sports before they came in, which was a really big help. And now with PBR's help, we've been able to accomplish this whole feat.
I mean, dude, it's exciting because one thing I always say about rodeo in the Western world is like 30 years behind other mainstream sports. So It creates a lot of opportunities that I've capitalized on, that now you've capitalized on, that the 12-gauge ranch, you name it. There's a lot of people who are out there kind of paving paths, but what's great is there's these little models, right? There's these little models in other sports, other industries that you can kind of take inspiration from, which is exactly what you did, which is exactly what we did. I mean, it's just
absolutely
it's fun to see.
DraftKings would be the biggest model that we could model ourselves after, and that's what we chose to do. DraftKings was the first in fantasy sports to really take over the football, baseball, golf, you know, the mainstream sports, and capitalize on, you know, creating a team, picking a team, entering to win, you know, giving out big money for the prizes and the fans, right? There's never been anything like that really successfully programmed for PBR. There's never been anything. They've had a few programs in the past that kind of attempted that, but never really truly got there as far as monetary resources. And we've been thankfully able to do that through expert guidance and you know, a team that got formed together through, you know, really all I can attribute my team to is, you know, it's been a blessing because of my story and my, you know, my experience in the sport and just connections.
I mean, it's pretty exciting. I'm definitely happy for you because I think sky's the limit with Rank Ride, and we got a lot of conversations we have to have off air. But yeah, kind of getting back to,
we want to give back to fans. That's the mission. All right. So I'm sorry to cut you off,
please.
But like before we move on, the point in saying any of this is the fact that I was given so many blessings by my sport, PBR, after I broke my neck. Number one, the opportunity to have a new career beyond that with our sister company, IMG, which was the model company. And then they afforded me a year later the opportunity to go do Dancing with the Stars. And then I got a Tom Ford model gig, which was a fragrance cologne thing. And in that world, that's like kind of the gold buckle, right? Like you get that and you get to go on, and that contract renews every year. And you realize like, man, what do I do with this? How do I give back to my culture? How do I what is the point of this? Because I'm not a model, how do I keep this going in a way that benefits everybody, including me? And for me, I had a brand builder that was super genius. And I also had my buddy Chad that's in the studio today. We're kind of the ones that came up with this idea. And then we had a brand builder that really helped us execute this idea and bring it into the mock-ups, and then which helped me bring it into this team I just told you about. And so from there, it's really just been a very tedious process of sitting through these program meetings week in and week out, learning the ins and the outs of the business, having to be like, PBR didn't just give it to me, like they didn't just give me the entryway into doing this for them. Like I had to step out on faith and build this company first, and then show them the legitimacy of it, and then prove it to them, on top of that. And then I'm still proving it to them day after day. And we built this company based upon the sheer, like what kept me going through this whole project, man, is the fact that I was helped by a major fucking charity during my wreck. I had a charity come in and pay for $14,000 of my medical bill, which was Rider Relief Fund at the time. Mike Hill, shout out to you and your wife. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all y'all did for me. But Rider Relief Fund went away, and now it's become Western Sports Foundation. And that's what helps all the rodeo cowboys that get injured, and Justin Sports Boots Relief Fund. And that's for pro rodeo. Western Sports Foundation is for PBR. For all those of you listening that want to know and want to get involved, that's what Rank Ride's mission is. My company, Rank Ride, for fantasy sports, is to donate back to Western Sports Foundation and help all the injured rodeo cowboys out there, give back to ranchers and farmers that are in need. We want to do special programs that people can sign up for. Being helped through my situation and being able to come out the other side the way I did, I feel like it's my responsibility to give back through this company. And that's our mission and our goal. It gives back to the fans. It gives back to the riders, the cowboys, just the whole Western sports culture. Like that's our mission, is to create an economy that can give back to itself, that feeds into itself. And
absolutely. And that's the key piece to all of this, whether it's the Gauge, whether it's Rank Ride, whether it's PRCA, PBR, WCRA, American. It's
absolutely.
Creating this self-sustaining.
Because we are a family, and that's the way rodeo has always been, and I'm not here to capitalize on any of it. My mission starting out with this wasn't ever to get rich. In fact, I've done nothing but go broke. I've spent my whole life savings on this. I spent everything I did modeling, and I am the financier behind this. Like, my money is in this, not anyone else's. I have a small handful of friends and family, including Chase Outlaw, like we talked about earlier. And he's one of my biggest financiers, behind my grandparents that it came in aside from my own money. And it took me a lot, I won't say on air, but it took me a lot. And it's not cheap to do what we're doing. And none of this was for me to get personal gain. Most of it is for me to do something beyond my own career that will continue on, that can continue to get back to the culture and the sport, because I was given so much. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be pretty forever, so I need to continue to pay the bills. But
I mean, you and me both. We keep drinking this late at night. I'm losing whatever looks I've got quick too.
But this is the stuff that is new in our sport that will continue on, that will be able to elevate our sport. I feel like, along with NFL, Major League Baseball, PGA Golf Tour, they all have fantasy sports. Our sport is the only one that doesn't in PBR, and it's a huge, huge, huge economy.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how much untapped potential there is in the Western world as a whole. And it's so nice to see like-minded people who are trying to tap into that.
Along with you guys, with what you're doing with the podcast here. I mean, that's what connected us, that made it so cool, and really good vibes right off the bat, was you guys are breaking out, doing something new for the sport and just the culture itself, not just the sport, but Cowboys itself.
Well, and that's all it's about.
Attracted me to this, that made me want to come in here and do this, because you guys are breaking out of the shell. Y'all are doing something new that is very good for our sport and our culture.
Well, it is, and it's just like what you said. I mean, to do it at this level, shit ain't cheap. It takes investors, it takes investments, both time and financial.
Yeah.
And we ain't doing it to get rich. So,
no, man, I'm not rich, and I've been doing this for 3 years. I've been building this company for 3 years, and we're just now about to launch. Most companies, it only takes a couple years or a year or whatever. But me, no, I know the value in this in the long run, and I know it's going to pay back not only to me, but several other people, including our fans. Like this is the next DraftKings of Western sports. And I don't know who all of your listeners knows who DraftKings or FanDuel or any of these other fantasy sports are, but they're giving millions out to their winners. This could happen so easily with our sport. And it's not happening now because of lack of promotion, lack of marketing, lack of belief in the idea or concept. And all we need to do is change that. All we need to do is show people that this does work. This is what it is. And this is our way of kind of continuing on the new modernization of our sport from our end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really exciting to see where it goes. But one interesting thing that you did that I think Ty Murray's the only other one who did Dancing with the Stars, right?
Yeah.
Besides you.
Yeah, me and Ty are the only ones. Yeah. He actually,
I know, super weird way to get into that, but
no, it's good. I felt like we were going to bring that up earlier, but now I'm glad you did. Him and I are actually the only two rodeo cowboys of any kind that have ever been on that show.
Or any other. I don't know of any other.
I'm pretty sure there was a bareback rider on The Bachelor, like one of the very first seasons they ever had. I only remember that because he came to our pro rodeo in Odessa one year, like right after that happened, and
Really?
Everybody thought it was a big deal. Yeah.
How quick did he get kicked off?
Well, he was the Bachelor. He was the one all the girls were coming to see. Yeah.
Oh.
He was the man.
Well, there you go. I wonder how his fake marriage lasted.
I don't
About
know.
The same as the rest
I don't know
of
if
them,
he
probably.
went through the whole thing, but when it comes down to Ty Murray can dance. He made it into the top 4. I want to say, I think I made it to the top 5 out of 12. He made it to the top 4. So you got that on me, Ty, but that's about it.
Well, so how did you get wrapped into doing that show? And what I would wonder is, were you like apprehensive about doing it? Because you had to have known you were going to catch some shit for it.
No, man. By the way, I love you, Ty, and everybody else. I know Ty's the king. He's the king of the Cowboys. So
Actually, that's Trevor Brazile. Go through Decatur.
Oh, yeah. Now you got to fight with Trevor Brazile. So not even my deal.
Ooh, that'd be a fun one to watch,
But
actually.
I can say I'm one of the only people who have Dancing with the Stars in common with Ty Murray. And we've shared some good stories. He came out there, him and Sean Gleason, CEO of PBR, one night during that whole experience. And, man, I'll say straight up for all my Dancing with the Stars fans and my dance partner, Sharna, I know a lot of her fans still follow me. I love that whole experience. It was a really, really cool experience. In fact, my buddy Chad that's in the studio I've been talking about, he came out there during that whole time. He actually got to meet Sharna. We all went out to a honky tonk one night, and they filmed it, and it was on the show, and it was fun times. But, man, at that time, that was about a year. That was literally exactly a year after my wreck. And they asked me to come do that show, and I did it. And that was my first big paycheck coming up since my wreck. I was like, hell yeah, of course I'll do it. I didn't know if I could at the time. I didn't know anything. In fact, sorry, Dancing with the Stars, I literally didn't know if I'd even be able to follow through, but I sure as hell was ready to take that check. I needed it bad. So I was ready to do whatever I had to. And I did. And thankfully, it turned out I was more ready than I thought I was. But then I wasn't, at the end of it, by the end of it, I was ready to be done because of how physical it was and how much trauma I had been through that I hadn't really dealt with yet. And was just living my life at that point,
And that's about when you started gaining some notoriety on social media and all that too.
Yeah, and my social media blew up at that time. Everything blew up, and I was cooler than the other side of the pillow at that time, for a lot of people. But for me, it was the same. I'd already seen some notoriety through bull riding and from some of the modeling I'd done already, and that wasn't the new thing. The new thing for me was trying to make myself do what I was doing physically again, for that first time. And I didn't know how that was going to turn out. And it was really scary. Like, you get 4 clicks before every song when you go on stage for the live performance they do every Monday night, right? You get a weekend to kind of rehearse and go through everything with your whole group and all the couples that are dancing that weekend. They do rehearsals, but you don't really get much of a rehearsal. Like, when it comes to practice, when we think about practice, it's not practice. You get like one run and that's it. And then it's up to you and your dance partner to make sure it's all good between there and the actual run, plus all the practice you had that week before. But literally between every dance, you only get 1 week of practice. The first dance, you get 2. You get 2 weeks. And then every week after that, it's 1 week. And then they add another dance routine every week after that. So you get, like, by the time you're done, you get like sometimes 4 pieces of dance choreography for that next week in 1 week. You get like 2 dances of your own, and then maybe an intro dance, and then maybe something you have to do with like a group, right? And so for me as a bull rider, that was a lot, like that was a lot. I'd never done anything except 2-step, and hats off to Ty Murray. He's a hell of a cowboy. He did it in his day. And, me and him have shared a lot of laughs over it. And that's something pretty cool because he's always been one of my heroes, and one of my protege or my idols. I'm one of his proteges, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And in that sense, and I really appreciate him coming out and supporting me. That meant a lot to me. He was always a good friend when I was riding and encouraged me a lot. But after that, after I broke my neck, I know, I think it kind of hurt everybody in the bull riding world because I was doing good and everybody wanted to see me do good, thankfully. And that was the next thing that came along, and so he was supportive along with a lot of the other guys at that time, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I got a imagine that that's one of the experiences that probably doesn't compare to other things. What, did you feel weird doing it? Or were you just kind of game for it because it was something new?
Oh, man, I was living in Beverly Hills, like straight up right in the middle of Beverly Hills, California, Hollywood. Right there for 3 months. And they gave me an apartment to live in. I heard, I never saw him because I never went to the gym, but I heard that Sylvester Stallone worked out in the gym where I was living all the time. And, man, it was cool. Like Nancy Kerrigan was on my season. Mr. T was on my season. Man, there was so many great people on my season, but it was neat. It was really a cool experience. I loved it, every minute of it. Shout out to Dingo with Monster Energy, a pro snowboarder. I really became good friends with him while I was out there. And I went to a lot of wild Hollywood parties in the hills. And
that's something we'll have to talk about another time.
That's a whole nother episode. But but man, it was a lot of fun and I lived it up. I don't regret any of it. And, I was able to hopefully inspire a lot of people from that accident I had. And just show people that if you believe in yourself, if you believe in life and living enough, you can still live, And
absolutely.
And my life hasn't been easy since. There's been a lot of ups and downs from the notoriety, people attacking you on the internet, things this and that. And I'm just really thankful that I have family that loves me. At the end of the day, it's taught me how much your family means to you. The people who are closest to you, your closest friends, I got my boys here in the studio today with me. And that's all that matters, man. Like, that's really all that matters at the end of the day. People who love you.
It truly is. And to be able to recognize that with enough life ahead of you is probably the greatest thing that a person can do. So you don't miss it. You don't want to miss the moments because they don't come again. And you've been through things that physically, mentally, emotionally, you've lost career, you've lost the ability to do pretty much everything you like to do. Man. And to still
I dove off into, I'll be honest, for your listeners and those who don't know me or know my story that well, to dive a little deeper in than what I've ever shared is I dove off into bad drugs and alcohol for a long time. Like, I'm not proud of it, I am a believer. I love the Lord with all my heart. And I know God put me here for a reason. But it was really hard for me to understand that reason for a long time. And whether you believe in Hindu or Buddha or whatever, I don't know who God is or what he is exactly. But I believe in God and I know he's bigger than me. And it's only because of him that I'm still here. And for that, I seek the truth. I seek to be better. I seek to be a light to those I'm around, whether I'm always at my best or not, And I know I've probably let a lot of people down because of my social, like acknowledgement or attention that people have given me since the dance show. That's one of the biggest shows out there, like for reality. And I'm not really good at, pleasing everybody all the time with my social media. I kind of speak my mind and what I think and feel. And I've learned that that's okay. That's really okay. Not everybody's going to like you or what you have to say or how you feel. For me, I don't care, like I really don't. I don't care what other people have to think or say or feel. If it's different from mine, that's how they feel, and I don't dog anybody for that. It's just who you are. I'm okay with people having a difference of opinion from me. But I believe in what I believe in. I love who I am and what I stand for and what I strive for. And I believe, number one, most of all, that people should love each other. If we all woke up trying to be better every day and love each other a little more and ourselves a little more, I think we'd be living in a great place.
I mean, I sure hope people listen to that, because we're just in this culture of attack everybody
Yeah.
at all costs, cancel everybody at all costs,
Absolutely.
ruin people's life
So much
at all
judgment,
costs.
so much judgment, and so much hate above all. Like, if there's anything I hope gets through this podcast today, it's the fact that through my life experience and my life almost being canceled, through this cancel culture you're talking about, my life almost was canceled. And because of that, I think it taught me maybe some of the most real, like most important things in life that matter most. And that is loving yourself, loving who you are. My life flashed before my eyes that day. I almost died when in the arena when I broke my neck. And because of that, it made me rethink my life and how I want to live it. I do now want to live my life every day to the fullest. Some days I do, sometimes I don't. Like, I miss the mark on that. But now I know, like, there's been some kind of blinders removed off of my eyes that some people don't see, that don't realize they are blind to what mainstream media wants to feed them all the time, or what people want to pressure them into thinking about themselves, or, maybe it's a toxic relationship or whatever it is. But I'm here to say, of all this stuff we could talk about on my podcast, on your podcast, I am just human, I am human living in a human experience on life with everyone else. But I was given a glimpse of death, and because of that death, I was given a glimpse of, it rearranged my total perspective on life, and that the most important things became very, very aware to me immediately in that point of death. And that is, number one, love yourself, love good, love greater good, love something better than yourself, love God, whatever God is to you, love it, and be better every day, and love those around you, because that's all you've got. At the end of the day, all that flashed before me in my mind when that happened, and that near-death experience, was my loved ones and the things that I felt like I had missed out on in life.
Absolutely. And I can't think of a better phrase to kind of wrap the show up on that than what you just said, because that's the ultimate growth. That's the ultimate life lesson. Exactly what you just said is the thing that people live and then die having never fully understood or achieved. And I think all of us probably sitting in the studio and everywhere know somebody who didn't quite get that. And they probably regretted it. And you're only 33 years old. You get that. Heck, I just turned 29. Fuck. But, like to be able to kind of understand that and live your life based on that, those simple principles.
It's really that simple.
That's all it is.
We can make it a lot harder, especially in our time. And maybe this is good to wrap it up with. We're all facing this corona shit. We're all facing this political kind of influence on our life right now that we've never seen before in America, that we don't, this is a whole nother episode we could get into with political stuff. But for those of you that follow me on my Instagram at Bolton Instagram, y'all know that I don't hold back. I don't really hold back on my opinions or my viewpoints, and I don't let the mainstream media or my association with Hollywood and the entertainment industry affect my viewpoints and who I am. But it's super important right now for us to all remember, we're all just human living a human experience on life, and nobody's really got it figured out. Nobody, unless you're extraterrestrial, and I don't know you, I don't know.
I mean, didn't the CIA just release some shit on UFOs? I don't even want to look at that.
Yeah, but, I haven't been given the secret manuscripts. I don't know, The aliens haven't visited me yet, so
I mean,
I think I've seen some shit.
from
in
what
the
I've
sky
heard
before,
is if
but
you start messing with real DMT a couple more times, you might find out.
I might,
And then you'll have
you
to
know?
tell me about it because I'm too chicken shit to do it.
we drop some good acid, and we might end up amongst the stars. But you know, we for now we're gonna stay here on Earth, and
It's comfy here.
for those of you that are still here, I don't know what the solution is to life. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that life gets a lot easier when you stop worrying about what everybody else thinks and you just do you, whether it's social media or just your daily job working at Tractor Supply. You know, it's life's good when you're just you and you are who you are and you love everybody else, and 9 times out of 10 they love you back, you know.
Y'all heard it here. Do it. Love everybody. Everybody love everybody, as they say. Yep.
ELE. But I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Absolutely, dude. We'll do it again.
Awesome, man.
This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content by Cassie Emerson. Our theme song is by Shay Ashshire and the Night Howlers. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.